I am going to talk a little bit about stream systems today, but tomorrow we're really going to get into a lot more detail on how streams work. Or not tomorrow, but on Monday. So I thought you guys might appreciate this watershed, since it does kind of include us in Fort Wayne. What is a watershed? No, it's not just a shed full of water. You guys ever heard of that before, a watershed?
Nope. Is it like that big gallon thing? That's water.
Say that again. Frida, you guys touch. That's more discharge. We'll talk about that on the next lesson. The watershed is really, it's the drainage basin for any body of water. So when we think about the river right through here, we're talking about the St. Joe River. And that's what this big blue line right here is. That's the St. Joe. And so when we're talking about here, when we think about the watershed, it's all the area. Okay, that's the big thing I want you guys to know. It's the area that drains into the body of water. So you have your watershed, and that's basically all a watershed is. Now the problem is, we think things are far away, okay, that's not going to affect us. But let's say that somewhere way up here we have pollution that's put into this watershed at this location. It's getting, let's say, somebody is not disposing of their chemicals correctly, and they're just dumping it in the middle of the ground, or dumping it in a small creek. Okay, well the problem is, it affects everywhere in this entire drainage basin. Because that chemical is going to flow down the river, and it'll go through the groundwater, and it affects the entire watershed of that region. So a single location can directly affect a very large area based on the watershed. And that's really important you guys understand that. The other thing I want to point out is this really funny boundary. What is that boundary? Why does it stop there? Think about how water flows. Why does the watershed stop here? What's really going on there? Yeah, so what does that tell you then? Yeah, so how did the slopes end? What does that really mean? It's the peak. Okay, we call that the divide. Okay, it's called the divide. And that means that right now, all the water in here is moving in this direction. On the other side of the divide, it's moving in that direction. You guys heard of the Continental Divide? Runs down right down the spine of the Rockies, right? Okay, that's literally the difference between draining into the Atlantic Ocean and draining into the Pacific Ocean. Okay, that's the divide. That's your drainage basin. Okay. What river has the largest watershed in the entire United States? Mississippi. Okay. Mississippi drains water all the way from the Continental Divide of the Rocky Mountains and the Continental Divide of the Appalachian Mountains. So that entire middle section, 50% of the United States, all drains the Mississippi River. So that's something to keep in mind there, and that's why we're having such a large problem with Asian carp in our region. Okay. You guys ever heard of that? It's an invasive species, and it was brought in from Asia, and I don't remember which country it was brought in from. But what it was designed to do, it was a water treatment plant, just like we have here in Garrett. You got sewage, right? You got to treat the water when we reuse our water. And the carp were brought in to eat the nasty stuff left in the pools. And they do a great job. That's what carp do. They eat all the crap at the bottom of the... Yeah, pretty much. Okay. And they really do. They eat all the... It's everything on the bottom. They're bottom feeders. Okay, so they literally eat everything that floats down the bottom. That's what they eat. Well, the Asian carp do a really great job at cleaning up. So this water treatment plant brought them in, and they were doing just fine, and they had them well contained, except Mississippi River floods frequently. And when it flooded, it made it over the berm of the water treatment plant, and the Asian carp escaped. So now we have this invasive species starting in the Mississippi River fairly far south, and over the years they have worked their way northward. And they're just about to get into the Great Lakes. If they hit the Great Lakes, it will wipe out an entire fishing industry in that region. Because they are mean, they're very territorial. Have you ever seen the pictures where somebody's driving a boat, and to be protectors, they actually get like really agitated, they start flapping their tails at the surface, and they actually will leap out of the water. And when we're saying that they're big fish. You get hit by one of those flying out of the water, you will feel it. Okay? So not only are they a danger to our current species that we have, but they're also going to be a danger to anybody in a boat. Because they will definitely knock you out of the water. Or out of your boat into the water. No, they will not eat you. No, this is not hooked. Jeremy's not coming to fish up our Asian carp.
Hey, it's not my fault. I want to know this. Tell
Alright, so guys, hold on. Let's keep going here. What? Alright, so that's the watershed. Now the next thing I want to tell you, hey, wrap it in. Let's go. Okay, this is going to be really important that you guys make this connection for next week. And that is this connection between stream load and carrying capacity. A couple of things I want you guys to know. First, the stream load is all the stuff that it carries. In some of our most polluted rivers, that can include tires, bikes, cars, and bodies if you're from Flint, like myself. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Flint River was always the happy dumping ground for a lot of people. And it's usually like, you know, they would drain them. They had like dams all the way along the Flint River, and so occasionally they would open the dams and let the river kind of drain down. A lot of people, there's a lot of missing people that they find. But that's all part of stream load.
So they just open up the dam of a bunch of bodies falling.
No, it's not like there's like, you know, they find them like along the whole length of the river. Okay, she's not open that can. All right, so basically we talked about, you know, how the stream load is carried. It's carried in two different ways. It's either held in suspension, so you're kind of floating in the water. And that's not on top of the water, but floating in the river, in the water column. So all these specs, that's basically being held in suspension. If you've ever been in a fast-flowing river, probably stood in the middle of it, you can actually feel the dirt and pebbles hitting your legs. Okay, that's an example of suspension. That's the stuff flowing through the water column and it's hitting you. That's an example of suspension. Bed load, on the other hand, these things are really heavy. So they can't really be held in suspension. So they simply are rolling down the bed of the stream. Okay. So you have held in the water column, and if you're not held there, then you're on the stream bed. That's called bed load. Right? Now, I wish I had a good way to just really represent this, and I really don't. Basically, all these is something called carrying capacity. And here's what I want you guys to know, and I really wish I had a way to demonstrate this, and I simply don't. So I want to make sure you guys make this connection. The faster water is flowing, so therefore the faster the velocity, the more the river can carry. So the faster it's flowing, the more it can carry. Now this is going to lead us into a lot of really important discussions here. So the more it can carry. Does that just mean like more sediments, or does that mean more mass? Both? You're right, both, right? So if I'm moving super fast, and that means that I could probably pick up heavier items and keep them held in suspension, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so that's basically what I want you guys to think about with this. So the faster I'm going, the bigger stuff I can literally pick up and move down the river. Okay. Remember we saw the episode on the Alps, and they were talking about how that the river literally floods down the valley, and the faster it's flowing down, they get the huge boulders. You guys remember seeing those huge boulders rolling in the river? Okay, that's because the river is flowing really, really fast. The faster the water's moving, the more it can carry, and by more, it can either be more stuff or bigger mass. Okay, but it does have a capacity, so there is a limit. And once you reach that limit, the heavier stuff does what? It sinks. It falls out of suspension and gets deposited. That's carrying capacity. And so we're going to see that right here, where we have the lighter stuff flying through suspension. You can see the lighter pebbles. See how they're kind of getting bounced up? You guys saw that one little bouncing around? The bigger pebbles are simply rolling down the river. Okay, so you have suspension, and then you have your bed load, where you have the bigger pebbles slowly rolling, and then the lighter ones are just happily bouncing along. Okay. So you got, it's kind of like just what we talked about before, right? You've got Eeyore, and then you've got Tigger. Okay? That's basically what we have here. Okay? So, that is carrying capacity. Guys, make sure you make that connection for Monday. Okay, that's going to be really, really important. Now, here's something else that's really important. Think about if you ever get to be the wonderful person who has the horrible job of being the city planner, this is not a job I would ever do. No matter what you do, it's never good enough. City planners have the wonderful job of trying to figure out what to do with the resources for the city. And basically, the problem with cities is they like to be organized. They want to be, especially in the United States, we like to have our little grid-work systems for our cities. We like to have things straight line, nice and creative, everything's perpendicular. Makes it easy to get around, except for full wave, which until you get a city map, confuses the heck out of everybody. Okay. I never understood how I can travel on the same road, and yet I have 3 different names I just crossed. So, okay, you want to talk about theoretical math? How do 3 parallel roads intersect at the same point?
What?
How? Seriously, you notice that? You have Clinton, you have Coldwater, and then you have Lima, and they're all parallel. They all go north and south, and then you get down to Glenbrook Mall, and they all merge to the same road.
I'm telling you to go buy stuff from the mall.
Yeah, it's actually a perfect place to put the mall. All right, so all roads lead to the mall. So I want to kind of make sure we talk about this, because when we think about rivers, the best way to slow down a river is to actually have lots of turns. And the rivers actually will normally put the turns in there, and it does slow down the river. The problem is, as soon as we hit the city, what do the cities typically do with the rivers? No. They call it controlling the flood, but what do they actually do? It's a really bad idea, but here's what they do. They actually channel the river. So instead of having this nice, easy flowing river that floods occasionally, well, flooding's bad. Right? We don't want flooding in the city. You got these, really expensive buildings, and then you can't run the city. The whole city's underwater. So we'll put it in a channel, and then we'll make the channel really, really tall. So when the river volume is really high, it'll just flow to the city. Well, here's the problem. What you've just done by putting it in this little box channel lined with concrete, you've now eliminated all the friction for that river. So what's it going to do? It's going to speed up. And the faster I'm moving, the more I can carry. So yes, while your precious city is not flooding right now, it is that same river is going to increase the amount of erosion past the town because now I'm flowing faster, I have a higher ability to erode more material. And so therefore, downriver, we actually have high erosion rates for major cities. Not only that, but also now you're in this narrow channel, you've increased the velocity, therefore you've increased its power, and instead of having occasional small floods, you have really big floods. All right? And that's what we keep in mind, especially when we think about the Mississippi River, when we think about all the levees that we have all along the Mississippi River. Instead of allowing the river to be itself and flood occasionally, which is why we have such rich farmland. We're going to talk about it here in the next slide. There's a town in North Dakota. I think I might be wrong about that. North Dakota or South Dakota. But basically, it floods all the time. They literally picked up their entire town and moved it away from the river because the levee kept breaking. And the Army Corps of Engineers kept coming out and they make the levee larger. Every time we make the levee taller, all that does is make the flood worse. Because now, instead of your river being 3 feet over its banks, it's now 21 feet over its banks. Okay? That's a really bad place to be. So putting levees in does not always work. Okay? And all it does is create bigger floods. So instead of having occasional floods that are small, you have rare floods that are humongous and cause tremendous amounts of damage. And so that's just one thing. That's the thing about streams. Yeah. All right, last thing I want to talk about. Yes?
Well, like, before we leave, you should look up like a quick video on Asian cards.
Well.
There's some really funny.
Okay, the last thing I want to talk about are floodplains.